From Abuja.
Hello, thank you for being a part of our show. I appreciate you. I'm Magnus Packle, and this is Magnus Packle GVA. As you know, it's all about how we can raise the level of living. In view today, global trends that affect Africa. We have in our studio Mr. Martins Oloja, Editor-in-Chief of the Guardian newspapers, to discuss how global trends are affecting Nigeria and Africa as a whole. But before that, in our hidden economics, ladies' high heels as economic indicators. But coming right up is our quick view on business and development indicators. How is Africa trending with the world? Let us take a look at some key business and development indicators. Which of the following countries has the highest number of adults as a percent of the population using mobile money? Gabon, Kenya, Algeria, and Angola. Which of the following African airlines has the highest number of destinations? Arik Air, Ethiopian Airlines, Egypt Air, South African Airways. Who among the following ladies is the richest female in Africa? Hajia Bola Shagaya, Ngina Kenyatta, Florence Alakija, and Isabel dos Santos. Stay with us for our answers coming up shortly. For suggestions and comments, see our email address displayed on the screen. We did this story some time back and thought we should do it again. Now, a pair of high-heel shoes has been a good friend of women for thousands of years. According to economists, the color of women's clothing and the height of women's shoe heels have an interesting relationship with the economic cycle. From hemlines to lipstick, female fashion trends have long been seen as indicators for the economic situation. Indeed, if you want a good economic indicator, just start looking at what women are wearing. The brighter the colors and the higher the heels, the worse the economy is. Modern high-heel shoes reappeared in the 16th century, precisely in 1793, when Marie Antoinette, the wife of French King Louis XVI, went to the guillotine to be executed, wearing a pair of brilliant high-heeled shoes. The advantage of the tall look, style, good body posture, good-looking legs that the high-heel shoe brings is essential when the economy is slow and you want to be chosen ahead of the bunch for the job. And even when not looking for a job, we want to keep you if you look so good. According to experts on the matter, the average height of heels mentioned in social media in the United States rebounded from 3 inches in the first half of 2008 to 6 inches in the second half, as the US financial bubble burst and the US economy turned more negative. Indeed, according to reports, women's heels peaked in the first half of 2009 at 7 inches, before retreating back to around 4 to 5 inches through 2010, and then settling at around 2 inches in the most recent IBM analysis as the global economy has improved. As Trevor Davis, a consumer product expert with IBM's Global Services Unit, has said, in an economic downturn, heels go up and stay up as consumers turn to a more flamboyant fashion as a means of fantasy and escape. Cyndi Lauper, the singer, in her 1980s hit, probably thought young girls just want to have fun. Turns out that's not always the case, as they really want to be taken seriously with their heels, especially when the economy is weak. So, economists and policymakers, if you're looking for indicators, just look for girls and check out their heels. Our Hidden Economics. Before we start our discussion in view, here are our quick view answers. Kenya, with 68%, has the largest number of adults as a percent of the population using mobile money. Ethiopian Airlines has the highest number of destinations. The richest female in Africa is Isabel dos Santos, with over $1 billion. Isabel dos Santos, a 40-year-old lady, is the oldest daughter of President Jose Eduardo dos Santos of Angola. As I've said before, and which is very well known, performance across Africa in recent years on a range of measures of socio-economic and political development is far from ideal. In Africa, economic growth over the past decade has averaged over 5% annually. This is clearly higher than the global average of about 3.8%. Africa has clearly rebounded from the lost decades of the 1980s and 1990s, when misery persisted as economic growth averaged under 2.5%. So how is Africa following global trends in business and development? To discuss this, we have Mr. Martins Oloja, Editor-in-Chief of the very preeminent Guardian newspapers in Nigeria. Mr. Oloja is a known expert on trends in Africa and around the world. Please join us as we discuss how global trends are affecting Africa and Nigeria in particular. Well, thank you, Mr. Oloja. We're happy to have you on our show. Once again, we're very pleased to have you right in our studios, I think for the first time.
Thank you.
Well, the last time we were talking about, we talked,
yes,
we were talking about Africa's competitiveness. And at that time, I didn't think that we were doing too well, at least according to some of the indications that you gave. Now, several months later, we want to revisit it, because just talking about trends, global trends, and how they affect Africa and how Africa appears to be competing. So do you think that any progress has been made, since the last time that we had this kind of discussion? Is Africa becoming a little bit more competitive than back then?
Well, it say that, as we say, we have so many churches here. When we want to sensitize ourselves, when we want to please ourselves, we say things are getting better. For the Lord is on the
Things are getting better, yes.
Things are getting better.
Yes.
Well, we have read in some African journals and magazines that, the mobile system of telecommunication is growing rapidly in Africa.
Yeah.
And, as I just joked with you in your office before we came in, If you report any of these telecom companies to our regulators here, they will say, in those days in Nigeria, for instance, we used to have about 450,000 telephone lines. But now, we have more than 100 million mobile telephone lines, even though the fixed lines that normal businessmen use or people use in the bureaucracy are not available. But they say that you should just praise God for that, because we have that even if they are not working well. But by and large, you see all over Africa, you see the growth of a particular telecoms company. They used to be number 3 in South Africa alone. But when they landed in Nigeria for their telecom business, they have automatically now become number 1 in Africa. And even Professor John Child has recorded them in his book on organization as the major multinational company in Africa. It's a telecoms company, and they make bulk of their money in Nigeria. And there are so many telecoms companies that are growing rapidly. In West Africa, in East Africa, Central Africa, and Africa, there are so many telecoms companies. And even in Kenya, and the world is turning to Kenya about the success of mobile money.
The M-Pesa program that they have. Yes. But let me ask that these companies are doing well. Let's just mention them and say MTN, for example. Okay, say that they are doing well in South Africa and particularly in Nigeria. Does that translate into meaning that Africa is doing well because they are doing well?
Well, definitely, because it's a company that is based in Africa, even though they take everything away from where they make the money because they are not quoted on the stock exchange. And a lot of people believe that their governance system and their control mechanism, their maintenance mechanism, not good enough. At least since this growth is recorded in Africa, there is a sense in which we can say that we are coming on, and then we are making some progress. And that years ago we never had this kind of thing, even when they were making money in South Africa, and they used to be number 3, but they saw a place where they could be more competitive.
Absolutely.
And they have deployed everything that is necessary. See, that's part of growth. So, even though we can say that other companies should do better. You remember that even when you were in government, there was talk about a transnational company, and it became Transcorp. And as I reported at that time as a journalist, I recall that the head of that government wanted a company from Nigeria that could be doing even oil and gas business and some other telecom business, other businesses around Africa, even outside Africa. A transnational company, a multinational company, but I don't know what happens to that dream.
But I think basically what is happening is that the way I see it is that Africa is doing better than before. Certainly, if we look at the 2 lost decades of the 1980s and 1990s, even if we just look in terms of real GDP growth rate, when Africa wallowed in misery, growing an average of, say, 2.4% over that period of time. If you compare that period with now, that Africa is growing well over 5%, then Africa can be said to be rising. Africa is doing well.
Yes.
But my question, what I always get concerned with is that translating into improvements in the living conditions of the people? Where sectorally is Africa? Can we go and feel that? Can we feel that in the pulse of the continent, in the way of living of the people? Can we feel it? Can Africa see itself as actually competitive and doing much better?
I don't think so. It is still literally written from the Book of Lamentation about inability to grow, and that they talk about poverty reduction, poverty this and that, but the people are not. You cannot find it in the people. The Bureau of Statistics and some other agencies can reel out statistics about growth, about how government is doing well, about how the figures are improving. But then the average person is not feeling it because, we just discussed, because jobs are not being created.
Why? Why is that? That's the thing. This so-called lack of inclusive growth. What is the cause of it? Why is it happening?
In the first instance, if you take Nigeria for instance, it's very difficult to grow here because critical infrastructure.
Okay.
We don't have critical infrastructure.
But that's what bothers me, that the economy is growing. With the headline numbers look good.
Yes.
Real GDP is strong,
Yes.
over 7% in some cases, but yet no jobs are created.
No jobs are
so
created.
what is growing?
Yeah, no, it's very difficult to see these intangible things that they talk about, that the figures are growing, the GDP is improving, but the average person in the street is still complaining. And then you, for instance, as a member of the middle class, I don't know the number of telephone messages you receive from your people every day asking for help.
You mean you too? The middle class?
You receive every day
Yes.
from your own people.
Yes.
And a lot of people in our offices complain that
Absolutely.
you receive a lot of messages from people asking for help
Yes.
because nothing is happening. Even in the villages, people are asking because, one, critical infrastructure like electricity that people need to do small-scale businesses around and succeed, not available.
Yeah.
Right now, we even have fuel crisis.
Yes.
Big energy crisis at the moment in Nigeria. How can people grow?
So what about all the technological change that is taking place? We talked about all the cell phones that are now in proliferation. We have them all over the place. We have all those improvements. Aren't they now contributing to increases in productivity? You know, so if that's the case, then that should help to raise the level of living for the people.
Maybe the real sector people who use these devices. You know, some of the devices we acquire here, people who should not even acquire them. Oh, I like iPhone. I carry it becomes a status symbol. But there is no growth you can see in people.
Yeah.
That,
they just have to have what the other person also has.
It is the same like cars.
Yeah.
When you ride on the street of Abuja, you see big cars that you cannot find even in most of the places where these cars
You're absolutely right. No, it's an observation I have made,
when you come to Nigeria, you come to Lagos, some places, you come to Abuja and some
But
cities,
isn't that a
cars.
reflection of the improvement in the standard of living of the people?
No, it is not.
What is it?
Which people? How many
people who are driving those cars?
How many people are driving those cars?
Okay, that is a point. And I think perhaps the headline numbers look good. We say GDP growth is 6-7%, but maybe they don't look good enough. Maybe it should be 10%.
It should be, yes.
Because perhaps the population growth rate is, the last census was somewhere like 3.2% in Nigeria. Let's say it's even 3%. If you're growing at 5-6%, it means the real per capita growth rate is only about 3%.
Oh, yes.
And that's not good enough.
Let me ask you maybe another rhetorical question which can deepen understanding of this. How many, about 170 million Nigerians, how many of these 170 million Nigerians are landlords?
Yes.
It means that you just do some businesses that are not so visible in Abuja, you make some money, and then you go and rent a place that is artificially too high, maybe 3 million, 2.5 million for a 3-bedroom apartment. Yeah, you can pay the rent at the beginning, but you can't renew the rent.
You cannot maintain
a lot of people I see now cannot renew their rent in a city like Abuja, and it is like that. It's artificial when you see it because and
the reason that's happening is because there's not real production.
Yeah, not real production
taking place.
No
happening as a result of there's no inclusive growth.
Inclusive growth in a city like Abuja.
The guys are not contributing to the growth.
Yeah, you're a city like Abuja. Yeah. If you come, you want to deliver a paper.
So maybe we can bring that to education. That maybe the people don't have the skill sets that are needed in today's global environment. Because you can't produce a good that is better produced in China.
Yes,
and in Germany and the United States.
Yes.
So if you can't compete with these countries, then you cannot produce.
Yeah, definitely.
So that maybe you think that may be at the root of it?
That takes us before the direct answer. That takes us to what you asked earlier.
Yes.
All these sophisticated handsets you can't find anywhere that you find in Nigeria.
Yes.
How many of them are made in Nigeria? How many, even the recharge cards and so many of the things that telecoms companies are using, how many of them are made in Nigeria to create jobs? We export jobs. So many of these things are still done in South Africa and some other places where they have critical infrastructure. And they bring them to this place even through some fraudulent means like that. That you cannot find the data for these import into the country, even at the ports. Poor education, even we discussed this on our editorial board every time.
Yes.
At the editorial board meeting, because skills acquisition always comes on. And we discussed this, we think that Even for you to have a good tailor in Nigeria now, 170 million people, you need to go to some neighboring countries to have good technicians generally, to have even masons, to have good woodworkers, to have good.
Okay, what's the reason for that? Is it because what's the reason for it?
We used to have even good technical schools to support even the polytechnic. One, if you are in Lagos, Yaba College of Technology. Beside it is an old technical school. But now nobody in Nigeria wants to send his child to a technical school.
Because?
Because everybody wants a degree. And even the degrees, what is the content
Why
of
do
the
people
current
want the
degree?
degrees? Why do they choose the
Well,
degrees?
definitely, it is not
are
a
the
bad,
degrees paying off better than the technical school degrees?
It is not a bad idea, but while some go to the university, some that do not have the capacity should end up in maybe some other institutions.
My question is that, as you say, people have shifted from the technical schools to the regular universities awarding
but the regular universities
the
are
4-year
not
degrees. So, but why are they going to the regular universities for so-called quote-unquote regular degrees? Is it because those degrees pay off better?
No, it pays off better.
It's certification. People want certificates.
This perception that certificate. In a public service, you can't grow unless you have higher...
It's a certificate,
It's a certificate.
Okay.
Or you can't grow in most sectors unless you have higher certificate. Nobody talks about skills. But now, we can see the gap, the skills gap, that it is not the certificate that matters now, but what you know. So you see, I have studied the German system. That the way they attach, and is the best in Europe. They are the leaders in Europe. That is Germany. But the quality of technical education is very, very high. I discovered that most of the people who handle the construction companies and some of the multinationals from Germany here are not university graduates. They are people who attended some of their higher technical schools. And they are not just engineers, they are technicians, but they supervise our engineers here.
Nigeria's national conference has brought the people together so they can come up with ideas to build a nation using inclusive growth and economic transformation. The question is, how much can a transformation in Nigeria, accounting for over 50% of the West African economy, help drive progress in Africa as a whole? Already, after its statistical rebasing, the country is likely to become the largest economy on the continent. With this, much more continental leadership would be expected of Nigeria. African economic communities such as ECOWAS, SADC, and the rest of them have the prospects to successfully integrate the continent and increase community trade by concentrating their efforts on community capacity building in the appropriate management of their natural resources. To be specific, if governance improves and conflict is reduced, Africa should find itself more competitive globally. As I've said in the past, along with its successful management of Africa's natural resources, broad-based infrastructural growth and a link-up for regional integration, industrial parks, and effective community development and management will attract new trading opportunities all across Africa. What we need to be in step with global trends would be efforts to close Africa's well-known competitiveness gaps in key areas, including institutions, education, skills, and appropriate technology growth. When we close these gaps and build solid productive capacities, especially in agriculture and manufacturing, inclusive growth will happen and Africa will rise. I'm Magnus Packle, and that's my view.